You are listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report, episode 176.4, Will Retherford's 5 Questions That Need Answers, a special all-NFL edition.
You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengelt.
Welcome back to the Central Indiana Sports Report. Will Retherford, our post-Super Bowl Licks edition of Will Retherford's 5 Questions That Need Answers. And we're going to do all NFL questions today, including a little history, which we haven't done much of.
No, we haven't.
I love debating history, so I wanted to have you go kind of do a little bit of research and see what you came up with.
Yep.
And how good of a job you did, because I have a feeling we're going to have similar lists.
Okay.
All right. But we're going to start, obviously, with Super Bowl 59, Will, and you and I basically said coming into the Super Bowl that the Chiefs would win. Mm-hmm. But we also laid out a scenario for exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. The Philadelphia Eagles were just the biggest, baddest bullies on the block. How did the Philadelphia Eagles get it done when they weren't even in our top 5 about 6 weeks ago?
They came together at the right time. They played their best football at the end of the year, and they got pressure with 4. And they made Mahomes' life an absolute living hell for 60 minutes of football. Defensively, they threw a shutout. They gave up 22 points, but they played an absolute perfect
shutout by
defensive
proxy.
game. Perfect game.
Perfect game. It was no question from the very beginning. It was 24-0 at halftime, Will, and it really could have been worse.
It absolutely could have. I mean, you're talking about Hurts had a bad turnover in the first quarter that ultimately would have. I mean, they were right around field goal range.
Right after a questionable call as well.
They just played. They played so good. That might be the best Super Bowl performance I've seen of my lifetime by a team. They were firing on all cylinders. They outplayed them on all 3 phases of the football, and they were just dominant. They were so dominant the entire. They're the best team in the NFL. I mean, they prove they are the absolute best team in the NFL, and
they win that 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I think they win it 10 out of 10. I don't think there's any scenario if that's the way the Eagles play that they get beat. No scenario they get beat. They had Mahomes looking terrible. He looked awful. I don't think I've seen him look that bad, and the numbers are going to tell a different story. But he was bad.
All right, question 1B.
Okay.
If you take the playoffs into consideration, who is the MVP of the NFL this year?
It's still Josh Allen. I think they got it right. I
think if you include the playoffs, you got to lean toward a champion. And I got to tell you, I think Jalen Carter was the MVP of this season.
I think he was the MVP of the playoffs. I don't think he was the MVP of the regular season. I think
toward the end of the year, man,
I think his impact was great, but I think that's a slight recency bias just because.
Yeah, that's the point.
No,
of including the playoffs.
I think if you look at the last 6 weeks, sure, but Allen didn't win it in the first 6 weeks of the regular season. I think I would still say Josh Allen deserved to be the MVP, although I think Carter deserved to probably get votes. He played. I mean, here's what I'm going to say. I think
it's Carter 1, Barkley 2.
While we both officially picked the Chiefs, we called exactly what happened. I mean, we said you
could see it coming.
For all intents and purposes.
I didn't believe it would happen.
For all intents and purposes, we said it was going to happen.
To be clear, I did not think that it was going to happen. I just said I knew there was a scenario where they just kicked their butts all over the field.
After we talked, the closer we got to the game, I didn't think the Chiefs had any chance of winning that game. And it was
about 5 minutes into the game for me.
In our family pick 'em, I still picked the Chiefs. Just I don't know why, but the second kickoff said the Chiefs are losing. The Eagles are winning this game.
I texted you 5 minutes into the game. What did I text you?
I don't even remember now.
I texted. It looks like the Eagles are by far the better team.
Yeah, they were.
But how many times have we seen the Chiefs look like by far the worst team in a game
Yeah,
and come back and win it? This, though, early on looked like exactly like Tampa and Philly, although this was even more dominant. The one challenge I want to give you on the best Super Bowl performance would be the Seahawks against the Broncos.
Yeah, that was 43-8 was big.
And that Broncos team was good. Peyton Manning was still very good. He had incredible weapons, and they had no chance.
Here's what I'll say: the best AFC team was not in that game, and
that's true.
I believe that wholeheartedly. The best AFC team was not. The Bills absolutely.
The team that would have represented the AFC best
would have
been the Bills,
or the Ravens.
Yeah.
I think pretty firmly. I don't.
But you cannot say the Chiefs did not earn it.
I mean, they earned it. Sure, I think it goes back to. I mean, we don't know. I mean, the Bills. The Bills didn't get that first down call that maybe changes that drive, and I mean, I know ifs and buts were candy and nuts, but you go back and you see the calls that benefited the Chiefs when it came down. The Bills absolutely could have been there, and I think would have performed much, much better than the Chiefs did.
We said a lot of different things about the Bills between the beginning of the season and the end, but before the season, you said something that kind of came out to be true, and is that the Bills were only going to go so far because their roster wasn't good enough. Mm-hmm. And it's not quite good enough, but it's close enough that we're going to talk about the last question of the day.
Yeah.
Who are the favorites going into next season? All right. Question 1C.
Okay. I love the multi questions too.
These are all the questions I have about the Super Bowl.
More talking time.
All the questions I have about the Super Bowl. 1C. The odds that the Eagles win it again next year.
Low. I wouldn't pick
Give me
them
a
as
number.
the betting favorite.
What percentage?
For the fact of being the champions, I'll give them 15%.
I think that's probably high, too. I think most people would disagree with this. That's a team full of malcontents that are about to lose their coordinators who have a huge advantage with that the play that they're going to make illegal, I believe, in this offseason, and that will completely derail any chance that they have. That is such a huge advantage. I don't think people realize
it is.
How huge of an advantage, especially when you throw Saquon Barkley into that. If you're 3rd and 3 or less, it's automatic. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you stop it 2 out of 7 times, you're happy that you've stopped him.
I mean,
and that's just that rule's going to stop, and people are going to have to find new ways. But assisting at one time in football was against the rules, and it needs to be against the rules once again.
They start every drive at first and every possession and drive at 1st and 9 when they get the ball on first down.
8.
Yeah.
More like 8.
But you know what? Part of the reason I'm going to give the champs 15 just because they're the champs. So they're going to be running hot going into next year. However, I think that they are
15's about right.
I think they're a perfect storm to have some sort of I don't know. They were on the brink of disaster the entire year.
All year.
All the cards aligned the right way for them.
And you remember what I kept saying? You can do it for one season. You can do it for 1 year. You cannot do that for multiple years. Ask the Chicago Bears of 1985.
What I'll say
is the offense hated the defense. There was trouble everywhere. They put it together for 1 year. Never able to do it again, and that was part of the reason why.
What I'll say is you watch that game and you realize that A.J. Brown is, if he's going to cause issues, is expendable. Devontae Smith is as good. He's a better wide receiver than A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's a better football player, but Devontae Smith's a better wide receiver.
I agree. And a lot less of a headache. And
I agree.
And a guy who plays hard on every down.
I agree.
As opposed to, if I was the Eagles, he'd be gone. If I want to repeat, he's gone. Jalen Carter's been great so far. He's always had a problem staying in shape, following the rules. Usually those kinds of problems tend to come back at some point.
Yeah.
Like I said, I probably wouldn't have drafted him, but I understand why you did because he is that big of a difference maker. But he's 3 or 4 years. He's a time bomb.
Chicago,
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's all grown up now.
If I were the Chicago Bears, I'd drafted him because he was the most skilled player of the draft class, and you should take your best player.
But he's a time bomb. At least he was at Georgia, and never could follow the program. The coaching staff at Georgia kind of gave him a not great report with the NFL because he, and that stuff tends to. Some guys grow out of it. But it tends to show back up after you're a champion. After you're a champion, things change.
Yeah, man. Well, and part of the going into the 15%, you're silly if you don't think that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are going to break through at some point. Like they're way too talented for them to not. And to be quite frank, I think the Chiefs they've got two teams knocking at their door.
Absolutely.
Next year for the division. Bo Nix is a hell of a football player, and so is
the
Justin
highest
Herbert.
The Chiefs are in my mind for next year is number 3 in the AFC.
That's
the highest.
I think you're silly.
Travis Kelce's done.
I think you're silly if you can't go back and tell me that Bo Nix is not going to be a thorn in the Chiefs.
Yeah.
He arguably
if they
marched
finished
down
third in the West, I wouldn't be surprised. Now, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes have been surprising me for the last few years. They've carried rosters that weren't good enough to win championships to championships. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they could for sure get there. But I think, Travis Kelce isn't done as a player. He's done being Travis Kelce.
I agree. Well, we saw the last glimpse of him, and I think we saw some of the visuals of the plays in that game are not great looks. So he's gonna have to answer some questions for sure, because his lack of effort and his lack of just being there, I think it was pretty glaring. And I would say the same for Mahomes. I'd say he was shell shocked.
I just don't think he has it. I think he's at the end of another long season where he's way older and you don't recover from really long seasons as well.
No, I
and
agree.
It's not his fault.
Well, and they've played.
He's been the most productive tight end in NFL history. You could make an argument. I shouldn't have said the most, but you could make an argument.
You could say that
productive.
you could also just, point out the fact that he's at the tail end of they've played 22 weeks of football for the last 3 years. They played more than anyone else has remotely close. So.
I'm not even sure it was effort as much as he just didn't have it.
And I think, Mahomes, it just looked. I never saw a quarterback look shell shocked like Jared Goff. Maybe in that 13-3 game against the Patriots, but
Peyton Manning in that game against the Seahawks.
But to be completely fair, I would also say that Jared Goff isn't really ever in a conversation with Mahomes either. So
Peyton Manning against the Seahawks is the other one I could think of.
Yeah, that's the only one that I could. You could sit and make an argument. Although I'd still argue that Broncos didn't play as bad as their score necessarily reflected.
In that game?
It was
dominant from start to
dominant.
finish.
I think they played a little better than. I think they played equal to the Chiefs. In this game, I just think the scores are a little lopsided. I don't think the Seahawks.
Part of my argument of the Seahawks having the best Super Bowl performance in your lifetime is that the Broncos were really good.
Yeah.
They got past the Patriots and the Steelers of that era, and they were really good.
The Seahawks just didn't let their foot off the gas. So the Eagles, the fourth quarter was a throwaway. They looked like they didn't even care. They were ready to. They were celebrating with 10 minutes left to go.
17 minutes to go. 2 minutes left in the third quarter. You could see that they were.
I agree.
Starting to celebrate, and that was a butt kicking. Buccaneers against the Raiders. I don't know. You weren't alive for that one, so.
No.
That one was part. They beat them. They were just bigger and tougher than them. But part of that was they figured out everything the Raiders wanted to do. Yeah. They had the game plan perfect.
Yep.
So did Sirianni. Incredible game plan. Mm-hmm. Say what you want about him. He had the Chiefs off balance the whole game, offense and defense. In fact, at one time, Susie, who loves football but isn't very astute at strategy, said to me, "Look how many people they're following Saquon Barkley." Mm-hmm. And then he goes over the top to Dotson there in the first quarter, and he had one-on-one coverage on the outside, and it was like, well, they can't give up everything.
Yep.
And so Jalen Hurts took advantage of what Saquon Barkley couldn't quite do, and it was all because of Saquon Barkley. Like I said, I think my argument would be season MVP would be number 1 Saquon Barkley, number 2 Jalen Carter, number 3 Josh Allen.
I'm still,
because I think the playoffs are what counts.
Josh Allen played really good in the playoffs.
Yes, he did.
Played really good.
Yes, he did, but he didn't win it. And to me, a most valuable player always has to come from the championship team. You can't have the most value if you don't win the championship.
See, I disagree with that because I could think of 4 or 5 examples right now off the top of my head that I would say don't match that thought process. Not in football, but just in sports in general. I could think you could make an argument.
I guess you could.
I mean, if Shohei Ohtani doesn't win the World Series next year, is he not still the most valuable player in the league? I mean, he's the greatest baseball player ever.
No, he was not the most valuable player in the league. The most valuable player on the league led his team to a championship.
So it's the MVP should just be the best player on the best team. Then.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That would be the way I would do it.
Okay.
When you're talking about a league during the season award, my threshold is you have to have been the reason your team made the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it's a lot different threshold.
I think you have to elevate your.
But if you're talking about voting for the most valuable player of the league, including the playoffs, I think the most valuable player has to be on the winning team. That's what I'm saying.
And Nick Foles would have been a year-long MVP, and he played 4 weeks, and that can't happen.
No. That's taking it too far.
Well, but that's taking it with
Saquon Barkley is not Dick Foles. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Sure. Best player on the best team was Saquon Barkley. He's the Central Indiana Sports Report season-long NFL MVP.
He's the 2024 Greg Mingelt's. Will Retherford's season-long MVP is still Josh Allen.
And Will Retherford is wrong. Okay, well, question 1D. Which was more dominant on Sunday, the Eagles' offensive line or the Eagles' defensive line?
Eagles' defensive line.
They were both amazing. Make your argument.
They completely changed the entire atmosphere of that game. I mean, they were the game. The MVP should have gone to a defensive player, but the problem was
should have been Jalen Carter, despite the stats.
There were too many defensive players who all had too good of games. There was 4 or 5 that all had the same stat line, so you couldn't necessarily individually give it to one.
Is there anyone watching that game who didn't think that Jalen Carter was the best player in the Super Bowl?
I don't think anybody that knows that really knows the game of football would say that. I would say that yes, he was the best player. He wreaked more havoc. He's the reason that the Edge was able to get home because the Chiefs had to devote two in a chip, 2 in a or 3.
3 sometimes.
2 in bringing
2 wasn't
Kareem
enough
Hunt.
sometimes.
I would agree.
And there were times where he was 10 yards behind Mahomes and made up the gap in such a split second. Mahomes didn't even have time to make one of his quick thinking throws.
He was a game wrecker.
He was clearly the Super Bowl MVP. I don't care what the stats say. What are we doing, people?
Well, stats got to count for something.
No, you watch the game and you say who is the most valuable player of that game.
Okay,
and it was
sure,
it was
but
definitely
that's never how it's going to work. So,
I know.
I mean,
I know. What's wrong with us?
I can sit here and say that because we were, as a society and as a people and as sports fans, we want to put numbers to everything. And sometimes numbers don't always reflect it.
It works in a season-long award. In a game, it's.
I would agree. I would agree that that thought process does work and has been used the last 2 years for the league MVP. So I don't understand. I guess I would say that it should happen in the Super Bowl, but we both know that you have to have the stats. The numbers have to back up the talk, and if they don't, then it's internet fodder, for lack of a better term. I mean, we know that Jalen Carter was the best player on the field because
everyone saw it.
Because he was, but he didn't have the numbers to
Silly.
prove that.
Jalen Carter, you are the Central Indiana Sports Report Super Bowl licks MVP.
I will second that.
Okay.
I will get behind that.
All right, question number 2. I've been pondering this as I consider myself an NFL historian. I've been midway through a book. I've been writing about it for about 10 years. Every time I get started on it, I find a new project that needs my attention now, but I'll get it done. These 3 questions have been going around in my mind, and I wonder how you feel about it. Number 1, I want to know the top 5 quarterbacks of your lifetime.
Okay, top 5 quarterbacks of my lifetime. And I actually have 7. So I've got 2 honorable mentions that I do want to mention.
Absolutely. Starting from your honorable mention, then 5 to 1, go.
So my second honorable mention spot, which would be 7 on the list, is Matthew Stafford. He's a player whose career was always kind of, because he played his first 12 years in Detroit, maybe less than 12 years. Yeah. First 10 plus years in Detroit was a should have been career. He always elevated that team as high as they could go. He immediately gets traded to LA. He wins a Super Bowl. He's been really good since then. I just think
he goes to the right place. He's Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I think he's a career that just, we're not going to look back and no one's going to sit here and talk about how incredible Matthew Stafford was, but he's just a really, really good quarterback, and he's
golden arm, golden brain.
He's still really dangerous.
As can be.
Yep, he's still really dangerous, and I'm excited to see. I still think he's a player who he's far from done. If he wants to continue playing, he's still got a lot of juice left.
I didn't think he did, but last year kind of proved me wrong. That I was thinking that he was thinking it was time to be done, but last year sure didn't look like it.
Number 6, Patrick Mahomes of my lifetime. I've been blessed to grow up in the golden era of NFL quarterbacks, the best era ever.
But you acknowledge he has a chance to get to one.
And I have,
right?
No, he does not have a chance to get to one in my lifetime.
If he wins 8 Super Bowls? Okay.
No.
All right, go ahead.
He does not. He cannot. It's Patrick Mahomes. He's obviously won 3 Super Bowls. He's won 2 MVPs up to this point.
I'll be interested to see where you think he could get.
He is the epitome right now of excellence in the NFL as far as the quarterback position, and I'm never going to discredit 1 ounce of him. He is 1 or 2. However,
he's been amazing.
In my lifetime, he's going to be 2.
I disagree with you, but I'm interested to hear your argument when you're done.
Okay. 5, Ben Roethlisberger. Probably another career that we will look over because of who he stacked up against far as his career. 1-2 Super Bowls, won it as a rookie, kind of
1-2 Super Bowls in the Tom Brady, Peyton Manning era.
And just kind of like Matthew Stafford, just a tough customer, hung in there, changed the NFL, or changed the quarterback position a little bit. His ability to evade pressure and to never go down. And he was pretty athletic in his younger days.
He was really easy to cheer against.
He was. And he was just...
That is not a likable guy.
He was one of those quarterbacks that you just said if he gets the ball with 2 minutes left to go with a chance to win the game, he's going to win it.
And you think you got him in your grasp.
Yep, and you don't. And you don't. He's Big Ben, and he's a legend, and I'm a 7 lover. I've had this conversation.
As a player, absolutely.
So he's got to be on my list. 4, for greatest, is Aaron Rodgers.
Best, you would have him higher.
Best, yes, best. I'd have him higher. And I'm going to actually talk
real
about
fast.
my best.
Let's talk about the difference between greatest and best.
Okay, so best is, were you the most dominant player in a period of time in your era? Is how I define best.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yes, Aaron Rodgers is actually on my all-time best. Is number 1.
Right.
He is
exactly
in his prime was the most.
I would disagree with you, but I would have him very close.
He's the most skilled thrower of a football ever. And he is the prototype for what every NFL quarterback of today is. And
Sonny Jurgensen would disagree with that.
Well, Sonny, I don't even know who Sonny Jurgensen is. So
there you go.
So maybe that's
the greatest passer of the ball of all
maybe
time.
That's an issue. I don't know if you ever watched Aaron Rodgers sling the pill, but I did.
I have. And I've also seen Sonny Jurgensen, and it's very comparable.
And I've watched it for 16 years. And his ability to protect the football and still put up numbers
and be able to run the ball, and the Hail Marys, and the plays coming from out of nowhere. And let's talk about that throw against the Cowboys.
Absolutely.
The greatest throw I've ever seen.
So Aaron Rodgers has to be 4. He's won a Super Bowl. He has won 4 MVPs, which is tied for second all time. behind the sheriff, and it's a shame how the last few years have gone for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has always been misrepresented.
Another guy who's easy to cheer against.
Has always been misrepresented in media and in life, and we are really going to be saddened to not appreciate.
I will miss him so much.
What his greatness brought to the NFL.
I will miss him so much. I so hope he has a big year next year, and it would be amazing if it was with the Vikings. If he took the exact same
be the career
path
arc
as Favre.
of Brett Favre. Yep.
That would be amazing.
Okay,
and those two franchises hate each other so much.
Moving on to 3, Drew Brees. Drew Brees was. I think Drew Brees has a solid argument. He could fit maybe 1 through 3 if you look at numbers and look at what he did and provided. Yeah. He was his impact on he transcended being a football player in New Orleans. He still is. He's like a mythical creature in Louisiana and in New Orleans. When you talk about greatness, you talk about Drew Brees is where the conversation starts, and his ability as an undersized quarterback to be so dominant and so excellent, make every throw, maybe the most accurate passer ever. Escapability, so cerebral, so just he was a brilliant quarterback. Just a brilliant quarterback.
He was definitely the best passer of the shorter pass.
Yeah.
He was not a great deep ball passer,
No.
although he was such a good short passer that a lot of those passes he led them into long plays.
Yep.
So he made it almost not matter that he couldn't throw deep. That was an exaggeration.
Yeah. He's tied for second all time, both touchdowns and yardage.
Right.
Just a brilliant football player. I know I just said that, but I don't know how you don't love Drew Brees. He is everything that football should be, and his impact on that community, what he did after Katrina, how his first 4 years started in San Diego, and to basically be told by a few teams that he was never going to be a quarterback again after his shoulder injury, and the fact that he came back and led one of the greatest careers ever is really inspiring, and I think this list wouldn't be complete without him on it.
I'm going to say I wasn't going to tell you my list until the end, but I was at Drew Brees' first game. I'm a Purdue fan. I love everything he did at Purdue. He would not be in my top 5.
No, I mean,
6. He'd probably be 6.
Of my lifetime.
6.
Well, your lifetime's a little longer than mine is, so.
Yeah.
He's not.
No. I'm talking about your lifetime.
Oh, he's not. I don't think I think he's above everyone. Everyone else, I mean, he's won the same amount of Super Bowls as Rodgers. Ben was carried to the one his rookie year. He was not the reason they won that Super Bowl. Jerome Bettis and that defense was. Mahomes.
He was really good that season, though.
I don't know. I love Drew Brees. Okay. So he's got to be 3 for me. 2.
He'd be number 6 for me, although there'd be a couple knocking on his door. So
2 is Peyton Manning. And I think I really still.
Our 1 and 2 will not be different.
I still think that. I think as times passed, I think it's kind of solidified itself more that Peyton's 2 behind Tom.
Yeah.
In the moment, I think you really could have made an argument that maybe Peyton could be above Tom in
a lot scarier
cases.
Quarterback. If you were an opposing defense and they had one drive and they needed a touchdown, you'd be much more scared of Peyton Manning than Tom Brady.
He's just the ultimate killer. He is
the only quarterback. I want to make this argument.
Okay.
The only quarterback I've ever seen where every time he got the ball, I expected him to score.
I agree. Yeah. I agree with that.
Rodgers would be the other one.
He was very young. In my, I was only. I would have been 8 when he left the Colts, so I didn't get to see the prime of Peyton Manning. I have really 0 memories of them winning the Super Bowl. I have memories of them going back against the Saints.
Right.
But just the 5 Super Bowls, and I got to see all of it in Denver, obviously, and remember all of it in Denver. But he put together the greatest season ever with his 55 touchdown passes in a 16 game.
Greatest regular season.
Yeah. And he's just the sheriff. He's just Peyton Manning, and there's just nothing more. I feel like that should speak for itself. He is just an incredible football mind, and I really hope history doesn't ever forget Peyton Manning.
By the way, I'm a serious football nerd, and I've made basically a formula how to come up with the best and greatest of all time. And you're the way you defined best and greatest is exactly the way I defined best and greatest. And I really like putting the old guys in there because they deserve their due. The league was tougher back then because there were only 8 teams. There were only 12 teams. All the best players in the world were. Every team was full of great players, all Americans. So I like to just say best in their time. I don't look at it any other way. People who say Serena Williams is better than Martina Navratilova because she beat her, and Martina Navratilova won 100 more individual tournaments. Give me a break. Of course Serena Williams would beat her. That's not the point. In your era, how great were you against your competition?
Yep.
I'm a serious nerd when it comes to that, but I still have Tom Brady number 1 and Peyton Manning number 2 in the history of the NFL.
And my 1 is Tom Brady, and it has to be. And I'm not going to go into some big long tangent on why he's Tom Brady.
Yeah.
And he is. I'm
the
not
champion.
Sure, I'm not sure there's a winner in any sport that I think the only people you can compare Tom Brady to are Babe Ruth and Michael Jordan and Wayne Gretzky. If we're talking about the 4 major sports, those are the only. He doesn't deserve to be in any conversation with anyone except those. And I would argue that he deserves to be.
I have him number 2 greatest NFL player of all time behind Jim Brown, and I have Lawrence Taylor number 3. So I would disagree with you a little bit on that, but
it's Tom is he's the
quarterback.
He's the best. No, I disagree with you he's the best football player ever.
He's not, but
the greatest football player ever. I should
he's
say
not,
best.
but he's number 2, and I would probably put him 2A or 2B with Lawrence Taylor. That's how great Lawrence Taylor was. But as far as quarterbacks, the comebacks, the incredible plays, the memorable plays, the championships, the memorable moments, all the drama, it's not even close. I'm sorry. I think if I was starting a franchise right now and I knew I had Bill Belichick coaching either Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, I would take Peyton Manning. But I can't rewrite history.
Nope. Well, that is the quarterbacks of my lifetime.
Very good. I think your list is very good. I think Ben Roethlisberger is number 5. Patrick Mahomes is number 4, and I disagree with you. I do believe he can be number 1 in the end. If he wins 8, 9 championships, as great as he's been individually carrying a team to a championship last year, I thought. I do believe he can get to number 1. But obviously Peyton Manning is 2 and Tom Brady's 1, and I don't think that's your lifetime. I also think they're number 1 and 2 all time. All right, Will. Along the same line with Patrick Mahomes having been in 3 straight Super Bowls, so too has been Andy Reid. So now I'm curious about who are the best 5 coaches in your lifetime.
Okay. I also had 7 coaches for this. Thought it was fitting if I was going to do 7 players.
Hey,
7
man,
coaches.
it is your segment. Name as many as you want.
So my second honorable mention, and maybe recency bias, although of my lifetime, I can't argue. Nick Sirianni is my second honorable mention. I think what he has done since he's been the head coach, all he's done is won football games, and he's taken him to 2 Super Bowls. He's won a Super Bowl. He's young. I think he has maybe the second most wins through this period of his career ever.
He would not be near my list, just so you know.
I'm not. He's 7. I just think he deserves.
He'd
to
be more like 17 on my list, just so you know.
So 6 is Bruce Arians. I have it at 6. BA was really good when he went to Arizona.
There have been a lot of great coaches in your life.
Kind of transformed Bruce Arians. Well, transformed Carson Palmer's career
Great
back
coach.
into greatness, and
I
obviously
don't want to disparage him. He's a great
obviously
coach.
won
As
a Super Bowl with Tom. He was excellent with Andrew Luck as his interim coach in Indianapolis on a team that may be the worst team ever assembled outside of Andrew Luck in NFL history. It's close.
At least the worst to make the playoffs. Yeah.
And he just deserves to be on there. He made Tampa Bay a winner when he went over there. He made Arizona a winner. He took the Colts
No
to the
doubt.
playoffs in a really bad situation with a coach losing to cancer. His career as a head coach was unfortunately just too short, and he obviously influenced Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck. He's been great
Had an
everywhere
impact
he
on
went.
Tom Brady.
Everywhere he went.
Yep.
5, Pete Carroll. What he did, and obviously us in the Midwest, especially being a little closer to the East Coast, we kind of forget the Seahawks exist sometimes. A lot of times we actually forget the Seahawks exist because they're just so far away, and they're not ever, they're always on a hidden 4:15 game, 4:05 game that, we're not watching typically because we're watching, the marquee 4:25 game. And, they play the Colts they play in Indianapolis once every 8 years. We just forget about him. And what he did with that Legion of Boom was one of the most dominant teams ever. He was really on his way to winning 2 Super Bowls till a pretty ill-advised, call on the red zone on the 1
And an
yard
amazing
line.
play by the Patriots.
Yeah.
Sniffing that out.
So he obviously won a national championship, 2 national championships at USC. Just, I think he's going to make the Raiders a lot better. I think just having a coach
gonna be
of
my
his
next question.
caliber is going to elevate your team to a different level.
So he
And
could maybe move up your list as well.
I feel like it probably not. I think he's probably cemented.
So you think the top 4 are?
I think the top 4 are solid of my lifetime up to this point.
They're going to be my top 4 as well. I'm sure.
4 is Sean Payton. And I think Sean Payton got a ton of love coming, when he went to Denver. Think of everything he did. And I kind of made the argument, he only won 1 Super Bowl. And then you really kind of look back on it and you think, man, Sean Payton was and is a really, really good football coach. And I think he was a coach that...
By the way, won 1 Super Bowl with a team roster that was not good enough to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you look at, to me, his coaching performance this year was right up there with Kevin O'Connell as far as a team that had absolutely no business making the playoffs. None. He took them there with a rookie quarterback, and I just think that he puts his players in the best positions to be successful all the time, and I would not be shocked if he won another Super Bowl in Denver. To be completely upfront, I think that's a team on the rise, and I just think his legacy is cemented as an excellent play caller, an excellent head coach, and a leader of men. So he's got to be 4.
I just realized you're not putting Mike Tomlin in this, are you?
No, it's not. Absolutely not. I will not put Mike Tomlin anywhere near this list.
All right. So we're not going to have the same top
No.
4.
My 3, Sean McVay. Sean McVay has won a Super Bowl and is now responsible for over half of the teams in the NFL coming from his coaching tree and his play calling tree. And his influence on the game is up there with a Bill Walsh as far as his impact on the West Coast spread. Sean McVay's impact on the game is going to transcend generations. And
Maybe.
it is. I mean, look at what's
but he's
happened
not
so
in
far.
the top 5 yet. In my mind.
He's won a Super Bowl. He's young. He's a brilliant offensive mind. He always has the Rams overachieving where they probably should be. And I think when you look at his impact, as far as you look around and all of these coaches, they're all from Sean McVay's tree. And to me, greatness is impacting the game for longer than just your career. And Sean McVay, up to this point, has done that. And has done that, I think, obviously below my 1 and 2, but Sean McVay's been incredible as a football coach. So I think he's got to be 3. 2.
I might have him 6. I might have him 6th.
2 is Andy Reid, obviously.
By the way, 3 is Mike Tomlin for me.
I think Mike Tomlin is.
All he does is make teams that aren't very good better every year. All they did was get better every single year.
Most expensive defense in the league the last 3 years, and they have 0 playoff wins to show from it. So,
And they've also had no quarterbacks. Anyway.
But there are other teams that have taken teams with other coaches have taken teams with no quarterbacks and won Super Bowls. Mike Tomlin hasn't done that. Mike Tomlin, I despise the fact that we sit here and just talk about Mike Tomlin being this brilliant coach.
He is.
The standard is the standard, and the standard is if I don't win a Super Bowl, I don't win a playoff game. That's the standard for Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin hasn't won a Super Bowl, hasn't won a playoff game in 7 years, and we still sit here and parade him around like he's
almost every single one of those years. They weren't even expected to make the playoffs.
See, I disagree with that. The Steelers are always supposed to be good.
That is not true.
They're always supposed to be good.
There were years they were expected to be one of the worst teams in the league. They had Mason Rudolph as their quarterback. And they still almost made the playoffs with Mason Rudolph as their quarterback.
They made the playoffs, and they only
did they? That's right.
They made the playoffs because the Ravens, the 2 years that the Steelers had no business making the playoffs, decided to lay down their starters in Week 18 and get the Steelers in.
By the way, I was going to tell you mine at the end, but my number 5 is John Harbaugh, and my number 6 would be Pete Carroll.
See, I think John Harbaugh is in a pretty similar situation as Mike Tomlin is, where the regular season's always great, and he doesn't win playoff games. He doesn't win playoff games.
Because, they're going against each other, right? They can't all win.
Sure.
Andy Reid as well, and, some of the greatest. Right. So that's not the only standard, is not winning the Super Bowl.
No, it's not. But it's getting your team to AFC championships all the time, which he hadn't done.
Fair enough.
And
it's a legitimate argument. We just disagree.
My 2 is, like I said, Andy Reid.
Yes, absolutely.
It has to be. I'm not even going to go into talking about it any longer, really, than this.
Although I will say, of all-time coaches, I think he's getting near the top. That's why we're gonna talk about that next. So.
Yeah, and then one's Bill Belichick. Yeah. So
can't argue with that.
Nope.
All right. Number 4. Since we've already kind of done this a little faster. Top 5 coaches of all time in your research.
In my research, I have 6 Bill Parcells.
Number 6.
I think because of I think he's very similar to Sean McVay, where so many of these brilliant coaches, these Sean Paytons, these Bill Belichicks, they come from his tree and they coach like he coached, and his impact on the game. This is tough because
it is.
When
it's
you look
really
at
tough.
Coaches of all time, you really do have to go back and look historically.
Yeah, if we're talking greatest coaches of all time, Bill Parcells is not number 1. If we're talking best coaches of all time, you could make an argument that Bill Parcells is the greatest coach of all time.
And I have 5.
I put Belichick 1, Parcells 2 as far as best.
I have 5. Joe Gibbs. I think he's the only. He's the only quarterback to win 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks, and in his last 2 years that he came back with
amazing
with Washington in 06 and 07, they underachieved, but his career in the 90s, I mean, he was up against, you're talking about, I mean, some of the best, I mean, probably the NFC's best era was during the 90s, and he still won 3 Super Bowls in that.
Can I make the argument against him real fast?
Okay.
And I think he's a great coach, and all 3 of those years was amazing. They weren't great in the other years during that era at times, and he seemed to be outcoached by Parcells a lot. The other thing being that... yes, he won with 3 different quarterbacks, and not great quarterbacks either.
No.
There was a very consistent theme, though, through those years.
Their defense was great.
And that their defensive line and their offensive line were the best in the league year after year after year. And Darryl Green was in the defensive backfield year after year.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to take away the accomplishments, but that's why he wouldn't be on.
Well, he's also... a little impartial. He's also an incredible NASCAR team owner.
That's true. Good point.
And won two sprint cups with my guy.
You're allowed to be biased,
Rowdy
man.
Kyle Busch, number 18. So I'm going to give Joe Gibbs all the benefit of the doubt.
I'm glad he got mentioned.
Number 4, I have Bill Walsh. And while his career, he's the only coach on this list who did not have 100 career wins. The West Coast offense is all him. And what he did in the 90s with the 49ers is greatness. So he has to be on this. 80s, excuse me. I'm sorry.
And the first half of the 90s. But, man, what he did in the 80s. Again, roster in 1981 had no business winning a Super Bowl. Yeah. None. And he just revolutionized the game. Great choice.
The top 3 are going to be quick. It's Don Shula. 3 most wins currently right now of all time.
And the correct answer.
Yeah. 2 is Vince Lombardi, and 1 is Bill Belichick. So
All right, so you're not going to put George Halas in there. Most wins of all time. I agree with you. I'm just
No, I just think
that.
No, I don't think so. I think the game is so complex. I just think the things you had to deal with
Plus,
when
at the time we talk about 8 to 12 players. Yeah, that's tough for players, but it's a lot easier to win a championship in a league with 12 teams than it is in a league with 32 teams, because every other coaching staff might have. But George Halas was so much better than everybody else. Most of the time, it was a player coach on the other side a lot of times, and there was no one strategizing like George Halas was at the time. It wasn't long before they were, but during his era of the 30s when he was winning championships every year, so I would probably not put him in the top 5 either, but I wanted to mention George Halas, who has won the most championships.
Yep.
But yes, Bill Belichick is number 1.
Yeah. He has to be. He's also the greatest general manager of all time.
I was going to say he's also the greatest defensive coordinator of all time.
So maybe he's just the greatest football mind of all
Exactly.
time.
Yes, exactly. All right, Will. And then question number 5 is the question we ask every week, although we probably won't be answering it between now and which comes first, the draft or free agency?
Free agency comes first, and then it's the combined free agency.
But new players on teams is probably the next time we will do this. But we've done it every week since we started the 5 questions. Will Retherford, 5 questions that need. Will Retherford's 5 questions that need answers. It's usually the first question every week, but now it's the 5th question. And it's who are the top 5 most likely teams to win Super Bowl 60, starting with number 5?
Number 5. See, this is kind of off the top of the head because you're talking about you don't know what these teams are going to do. You don't know what any of this looks like.
Of course.
I would say
this is completely ludicrous, Will. What we're doing
it is.
right now.
It's complete.
But we'll change when the factors change.
Yeah. As much as I want to say the Lions, I think they're going to have some issues early in the early going of losing both their coordinators. I'm going to say 5 Minnesota Vikings. Why not? Kevin O'Connell's he's a really, really good coach. He's a top 3 coach right now in the league right now.
I wanted to prove it to me.
I agree. I agree. But
a lot of coaches have come and gone who everyone thought was brilliant.
They bring a great quarterback in. They bring a quarterback that can win, and that team is ready, primed to go. So I don't see, and especially, if any of the Aaron Rodgers rumors are true. I think
you're right. I did not have them on my list, but you've convinced me. They should be on that list. With the question being most likely to win the Super Bowl, if they do get that quarterback, you're right. It's possible.
And if Aaron Rodgers goes, Devontae Adams is going, and they're going to figure out a way to get him on the team. Aaron Jones probably comes back because him and Aaron Rodgers are best friends. So you're going to add to.
Oh, I want this to happen so.
You're going to have Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Devontae Adams, and T.J. Hawkinson.
How much would
offense?
How much would that first Packers Vikings game be?
Oh my God!
I might not the Favre. I might have to maybe not the Favre level, but it would be something else.
That's a team, and that defense
because
is
Jordan
good,
Love.
too.
We're going to talk. I think the Packers might be on this list too.
That team is good. That team is ready to go.
All right, number 4.
See, now I feel like it's tough because I think there's 3 teams in the AFC that really have a great chance, but I'm not going to include one of them for the sake of this conversation. 4 for me is I'm going to say the Ravens. I think that they're close, really close, but I don't know if they still have something to prove. I think they still have to prove that they can win when the going gets hard, and they have not done that up to this point. They just make a lot of boneheaded decisions, and they don't have they're so dependent on Lamar being great Well, I shouldn't say that. They had 8 Pro Bowlers, but
yes, they
has
are.
to be he has to be the point guard of that
He
team.
is an
distributing the ball.
incredible football player who, speaking of revolutionizing the game,
Yeah.
now everyone's looking for the next Lamar Jackson.
And so I'm going to put them up there. Although an injury to Lamar and that team becomes
it's just different.
500.
It's
I think
Peyton Manning gets hurt in his prime.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to put them at 4. 3 is the Packers. I think they were, like you said it the whole year, and I was pretty on the Packers from the beginning of this year, as far as I thought that they really had a legit chance, and I think that your analysis of them maybe being a year away was maybe a little closer than me thinking they could win the Super Bowl, but they're a really good team. They're an alpha 1 receiver away from, like, hey, this is a team that might just mess around and win the NFC.
And they're not gonna not go get that receiver.
No,
right?
they're going. I don't know. They don't like to do that. They don't like to do it. I mean,
Look at
historically,
the draft. They're
maybe, but they fell into Devontae Adams. He was a late round
Yes,
draft
he
pick.
was.
It wasn't like he was some alpha 1 they got.
have
I feel
to.
like you have to.
When you have one hole that big, you've got to go fix it.
I think you have to. I also think Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft is a really good tight end room, and I think that goes a position that goes overlooked as far as making excellent teams. But so far, if you look back at the last 4 or 5 years of a Super Bowl, common denominators, every one of those teams has a top 5 tight end in the league. So I could think of the Rams and Bengals being the exception to that, but that's the only exception. So I think it's a really important position, and I think that Tucker Kraft really proved that he's ball player last year. He is a really good tight end, and tight ends take a minute to age. So I'm going to say the Packers. Plus, I think that Jordan Love didn't play great in that Philadelphia game, and they still had a chance late in the game. I mean, they're still a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. So I don't know. I mean, yeah.
By the way, they're on my list.
Yeah. I think 2 for me is the Eagles. I think you have to say that if everything can be as good as it was this year, that they're not the best team in the league. They're clearly the best roster. They have the most skill.
I completely expect them to fall apart, but
I do
they
too.
would still be
I do
number
too.
5. They would be number 5 on my list.
I still think they have a chance to
Of course
completely
they
fall
could.
apart.
They were so good on Sunday. Of course they could win it again.
Yeah.
So you can't not put them on the list.
I don't think that there's ever been a list as far as maybe the Rams after they won it, where the team didn't come back and wasn't a top 5 most likely to win it the next year. So I'm not going to start a trend and do that either. I'm going to put it. I'd like to be a trend starter, but I think that if this team with this talent can get rid of a few distractions, they're way too good not to. That team is built to win. 1 is the Bills. And Josh Allen's time is coming. He's going to win a Super Bowl. He is way, 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 way too good to not win a Super Bowl in his career.
Yep.
It's coming. And I think that the Chiefs they're good for the getting next year. I think
they're number 7.
I think they're going to take some licks next year. I don't think they're going to be. I think I'm
a doubter now. I think they're number 7.
The problem is that I don't think it's some conspiracy that the Chiefs are supposed to be in the Super Bowl and stuff, but there was a lot of fundamental calls that really went their way in some games that affected the outcome, and I just don't think that you can always be that lucky. I just think at some point the luck has to run out. We could go through 5 games right now off the top of our head that they could have lost based on seriously one call. So
there was a time in the NFC in the mid '80s when Joe Montana and the 49ers just were not even close to good enough to beat the Raiders and the Redskins and the Giants. Mm-hmm. They just weren't even close. And then they completely retooled and came back, and Joe Montana won 2 more. That's what I think might happen with the Chiefs. I think they have their dip next year. I'm almost certain that.
Yeah.
There's no way. You talked about it earlier. Playing 22 games and not even mentioning preseason practices, extra practices every year. That takes a toll. And if Man, they're going to have to add an awful lot of talent.
I just think that division. I think that division's getting too good.
I think the Bengals. I'd put the Bengals probably ahead of them just because of Joe Burrow. I think I might put the Chargers ahead of them. I think I would definitely put Houston ahead of them, which I would have number 6, by the way.
I don't. The AFC South is.
I think Houston has a chance to be very good.
The AFC South is not going to.
The defensive line special.
Get close.
That defensive line special.
I think you could make an argument they might not win the division next year. So,
of course you could, but I would put them number 6 on my most likely. I would probably have them higher because I think highly of them, but 3 of the top 4 teams are in the AFC, So anyway, I agree with you. The Buffalo Bills are going to be the best team in the NFL in 2025. However, because I think the Ravens are going to be pretty close to them, I would put my most likely team to win the Super Bowl in 2025, the Green Bay Packers. I think they're ready. They're young. They've got cap space. They, young guys are still maturing through their lives, and when you have that many young players, I mean, we saw it with the Packers, with the Brett Favre Packers.
Yeah,
they all kind of came up together. The whole kind of crew, and they all kind of matured together, and they just got better and better every year. And I think this Packers team is really close. If they don't win it this year, they might be dominant the next year.
The Packers are Oklahoma City of the NFL, whereas you have a really solid young core that, and I think that kind of developmental process as a team works a little bit better in the NBA versus the NFL. One, because you have a lot less people that impact an NBA team. I mean, it's really easy to bring 5 guys and get them to gel together over the course of 3 or 4 years. But in the NFL, that's tough because you have 53 that have to be on the same page. And so I think you just have a much bigger margin of error as far as getting everybody to be on the same page at the same time. And I think that's really hard to do. But if there is a team that I think can elevate themselves further, I think that can take the biggest leap from year 1 to year 2 as far as from this past season to last season. I would say it's the Green Bay Packers and I think the Denver Broncos. I think those are 2 teams that are
Your Broncos is my Texans.
Are only going to get better. See, but I don't think the Texans underachieved. I think the Texans achieved right where they're supposed to and probably right where they're going to next year. Because that's just the way the AFC South works.
I think you're completely wrong about that. The injuries they had were key injuries.
I think they made an absolutely boneheaded decision, and I said it again. I think you look for the grass is greener, and you get bit in the ass. And I think that D'Amico Ryans is going to get bit in the ass by firing Bobby Slowick. I mean,
that might be true. But I do think Ryans is.
Oh, I think he's a great coach. I think he's a great coach. I just think he made a really dumb decision for his young quarterback.
Or he knows exactly what he was doing, and we'll see.
And
we'll see.
We will see. We will see. What I'm going to say.
You take the Broncos. I'll take the Texans head to head.
What I'll say. The Texans got the division in a year that Jacksonville's not going to be as bad.
They had a bad year, Will. I understand. They had all kinds of key injuries in the exact wrong spots. They couldn't block by the end of the year.
They're not going to be bad.
They were not a good team last year, but they're going to fill their holes, and they have some of the fewest holes in the NFL.
Colts are going to be better next year. Titans going to be better next year. They're going to be better next year. They have the number
one. The Jaguars, I'd buy.
The Titans had the number 1 defense in the league last year. And they were literally a quarterback away.
The other team wasn't throwing in the second half because they were always behind.
Sure, but I would say that they statistically were really good.
At times, they were really good.
I don't think the division is going to be as bad as it is. I think, and that's why I don't think it gets tough. I mean, Jacksonville won 5 games this year, and the Texans beat them by a combined score of 7 points in the 2 games.
I know there wasn't that much difference between the 2 teams.
No, there's no difference.
The ball bounced in the Texans' way, and didn't the Jaguars' way. But the Texans were very young, very young. Their defense is getting to the point where it's getting scary. Those guys on that defensive line, they can fly around. Now they've got to fill a couple holes there. They gave up a lot of points. They got to fill some of those holes, but there aren't that many holes to fill. Same with the Packers.
I mean, I think the Packers have less holes, and I feel more confident in the Packers as a organization than I do the Texans.
Oh, I don't think the Texans are winning anything. Like I said, I have them number 6 because Baltimore and Buffalo, I think, are going to be the 2 best teams in the NFL.
We'll see. I think the whole landscape of that division is going to change. I think it's just going to be. It always does. It's probably the most vital division, maybe in the entire league.
Without question. All right. Last question number 6, and I've got about 2 minutes. Anything else you wanted to bring up? There were some NBA trades. The Pacers have been horrible the last 2 games. Anything you wanted to bring up?
I'm not gonna waste my 2 minutes on the NBA. I'm going to give people a glimmer of hope.
Okay, let's do that.
You know, spring is around the corner, and I know that because pitchers and catchers have reported.
Oh, I didn't even know.
And all of a sudden, the great cities on the Gulf and Atlantic coast of Florida and the desert in Arizona are filled with phenomenal baseball talent, teams looking to start a new year, a new chapter, and it's just a great feeling. God, when spring training gets, you see videos of the boys down there, and
I'm getting a little verklempt.
You know, Jupiter getting ready to play ball, and it's just a beautiful thing. You know, the sun's warm. You're gonna get on there, and you're just gonna feel excited.
25 teams feel like this is our year.
Yep, absolutely. And you know what? 25 teams may be right.
They're not all right, but they're 25 teams that should probably feel like they can compete with anybody except a couple who knows what happens.
And pitchers and catchers reporting. And my girlfriend Addie, you're the best. I would like to say that she gets a little tired of me talking about the importance of spring training, but it has to be there because it's the only hope that people have in these next 6 weeks. This is a pretty miserable time of the year. It is cold. It is rainy. It is gloomy.
NCAA tournament will help a little bit.
Yeah,
and then the NBA playoffs will get here. But by then we'll be in the dog days of baseball, and we'll be ready for a little more basketball.
There's nothing better than knowing on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
Absolutely.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm getting to watch baseball.
Especially on a year where the Redlegs might be pretty darn good.
Well,
at the very least, they should be interesting.
They should. That division should be interesting.
Very interesting. We'll be talking a lot about that throughout the year, Will. Thank you so much for your time. This has been a lot of fun. You went 1 minute and 37 seconds over.
Well, when you get me talking about the MLB, how can you not get romantic about baseball?
Absolutely. I got a little tear in my eye you talking about that. I felt like I was watching Field of Dreams, making me romantic about baseball again, Will. I can't wait for this baseball season. I fluctuate. I'm not as loyal as you are with the baseball. When the Reds are good, I'm in. When the Reds aren't good, I'm out on most of the season. So, but I do have teams. When the Reds aren't good, I kind of have a pecking order of who I like in what order. And so I kind of like to pick up the Seattle Mariners. I like to pick up the Texas Rangers.
Yeah.
So I do like to kind of do that, mostly because I'm a hater, and there are a lot of teams that I really dislike. Growing up as a kid, the San Francisco Giants, can't stand them. The Chicago Cubs. Is there anything worse than the Cubs, Will?
I'm telling you, the voodoo, the black magic of Wrigley Field is one of the most. We need to take a sorcerer or something up to Wrigley Field and
such a great place.
Just figure out what the hell goes on there.
Such a great place for such a horrible organization.
It is, and
their fans, Will.
I'm
They're worse than Cardinals fans.
I'm sitting here thinking about March 27th. Dad and I are going to be there opening day. We're going to get to watch first pitch, and hopefully the Cubs lose.
And that, of course, is the mantra of Greg Mengelt and the Central Indiana Sports Report. Yes. Cubs lose. We can agree on that.
Mm-hmm. We can.
I'm Reds, you're Cardinals. We can both agree.
Yeah.
Ugh. I'll take the Yankees. I have a list, Will. I'm going to finish it with this. I have a list that's completely fictional that I always said if I had a son that played for him, I still wouldn't cheer for him. It's a list. One in college, it's Kentucky. That's it. That's the only one. Mm-hmm. And in professional sports, if my son played for the Flyers, no chance I'd cheer for him. If my son played for the Cubs or Giants, no chance I'd cheer for him. If my son played for the Ravens or the Raiders, no way I'd cheer
Yeah.
for them. And so the Cubs and Giants are definitely on that list, and I love hating those teams.
Yeah, I if my son if he played for the Cubs, no way in hell I'm buying.
You'd hope he did well, of course.
I would hope he did bad. I would hope he did bad, because if he's good, that means the Cubs are better, and that means the Cardinals aren't good. And these colors don't run.
And that is the perfect way to end that. Thank you so much, Will, for your time. This has been a lot of fun. We went a little over, but it's okay because it was. I think this might have been our best one.
Well, and we make the rules.
If
you don't like it, stop listening.
Except for the people who are waiting for me to make a phone call. So
yeah, well, they can wait.
They can wait because this was great. Thank you so much. And thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, follow. You know where we are. We're at SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, Apple. Just search Central Indiana Sports Report. Do it so you don't miss a single segment. And it would be very helpful if you told a friend about the Central Indiana Sports Report. In case you haven't heard, the Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media. Also, if you haven't heard, hello, Susie.